welcomes you to Crystal Cave and its 125 scenic acres. There is much history here as the caverns have been open to the public continuously since 1871. Crystal Cave was accidentally discovered by two farmers blasting for limestone. William Merkel and John Garrett noticed an opening in the side of the steep hill. After removing some of the dirt, they ventured inside, but only for a few feet, as darkness and fear of the unknown kept them from going any further. Knowledge of the newly discovered cave spread rapidly. A group of adventurous neighbors, including John Garrett, returned to the site a few days later. They came with ropes, candles, and coal oil lanterns, and found the cave to be of considerable dimension. They would be the first people to witness the wonders of Crystal Cave and its glorious, pristine formations. Millions of sparkling crystals covered the walls and ceiling of the cave. The cave became known as Crystal Cave. It would become Pennsylvania's first show cave. This entrance will lead you deep underground. You will find a different world down there, fascinating and mysterious. And so it was more than 140 years ago when men first began to explore the darkened depth of Crystal Cave. In the early days, many people wondered where the passages went, but only the bravest pushed on by the dim light of tallow candles and coal oil lamps. Two curiosity seekers from Kutztown arrived on horseback to explore this natural wonder that had sat quietly for centuries. Using candles as feeble lighting, Charles Snyder and Louis Sander climbed carefully over fallen rocks a distance of 250 feet. They carved their initials and last names into the base of a formation that is called the Seal Rock. This inscription, dating 1871, is the only known etching that was made while the cave was still in its natural state. A few months later, Samuel Kohler purchased the property for $5,000. He built a wooden door to protect his cave from vandalism. Kohler then began to develop the cave for the paying public. He built wooden boardwalks, stairways, and bridges to provide safe passage for tourists. The grand illumination of Crystal Cave took place on May 25, 1872. Tourists were charged 25 cents for admission and were given a torch to carry and an extra supply of matches to keep in their pockets. As Crystal Cave's reputation grew, visitors began to travel great distances to see the cave. Early tourists arrived by train and horse-drawn carriages. This was a comfortable way to travel as people wore their Sunday-best clothing to tour Crystal Cave. This opera bus was built in 1891 in New York City and was used to carry passengers to and from the local Virginville and Kutztown train stations. In 1874, the historic inn was built attached to the original stone farmhouse. The inn's design was to give room and board to the cave's visitors who spent the night. Two cornerstones were placed at the rear corner of the hotel. For those tourists spending the night, evening entertainment included dances and hoedowns featuring live bands in the Crystal Cave Ballroom. This small wooden enclosure served as a bar and refreshment stand inside the cave. Paul Meisner drew this and 5 other pencil etchings by candlelight in 1876. When his candle went out, he spent the next several hours in darkness until his friends came to his rescue. The signature room was recently found in one of the side passageways. Between 1879 and 1918, tourists ventured off the tour path and signed their names on the ceiling and walls of this 18 by 25 foot room. As many as 85 names were discovered. Some of those names may include members of the Berks County Historical Society who visited Crystal Cave in 1906. That same day, a group of students from the Keystone State Normal School in Kutztown arrived by omnibus to tour the cave. One of the more unusual events to take place at Crystal Cave was the marriage of Marion Kurtz and Francis Finley. They were married on October 15, 1919, beside a floral decorated altar inside the cave. A pianist played the bridal chorus on a piano that was brought into the cave for the special occasion. Later, the invention of the automobile enabled more families to travel greater distances. This family tradition has been carried on for generations, from the time of the cave's discovery to the present day. You may be wondering, how was all of this made? Has it always been here? Does it ever change? So geologists, those scientists who can tell us the origin, history, and structure of the Earth, began to look back through the pages of time. Back they went, looking for the very first chapter of the story of Crystal Cave. When they finally found it, they had gone back some 300 million years to a time long before man walked the Earth. During this time period, the Earth was covered by inland seas and tropical forests. Most of the state of Pennsylvania lay hidden beneath the shallow waters of the Mississippian Sea. Animal life in those days was actually found in the waterways, where it swam and crawled in great variety and number. As the centuries slowly passed, shells and ooze settled on the bottom of the sea. Mud and sand washed in from nearby shores and rivers. The layers became thicker and thicker until they gradually were cemented into solid rock. The shells and ooze became limestone. The mud became shale, and the sand became sandstone. A period of mountain building began when tremendous forces inside the Earth began to push upward. The crust of the Earth was pushed higher and higher until the inland seas drained away, leaving mountains and hills, dry land, and a cooler climate. This powerful upheaval tilted rocks at every conceivable angle. Limestone and sandstone beds in this area are more brittle and were more affected by the upheaval than harder rock, such as granite, located to the north. Some of the beds stood almost upright. In some places, the more brittle beds were separated from each other by fractures or fault lines. The upheaval was the beginning of Crystal Cave. Meanwhile, on the surface, millions of years were going by, and the Earth experienced many eras, periods, and epochs, including the Ice Age and the Glacial period. Finally, the rains fell, surface streams flowed, and the forests grew. The world as we know it began to emerge. If we could have come back to this area about 1 million years ago, the Earth would have looked something like this. Through the years, rivers fed by nearby tributaries slowly meandered along, dragging sand and gravel. Gradually, the streams cut down through the sandstone and into the underlying limestone. Dead leaves, grass, and wood on the forest floor gave off carbon dioxide as they decayed. Rainwater and melting snow absorbed this gas as it flowed over the decaying material, and it became a weak solution of carbonic acid. Armed with this powerful tool, the water reached into every crevice in the limestone, dissolving the soluble rock and slowly carrying it away in solution. Eventually, large openings were hollowed out far beneath the surface, forming underground rooms and chambers. The forces inside the Earth were still pushing upward, and the land continued to rise. Nearby rivers cut deeper into channels. Eventually, the higher cave passages became dry. This process continued for thousands of years, and the dry, empty passages left behind bear mute evidence of this hungry acid-laden water. Here and there on the Earth's surface are found sinkholes. Almost everywhere there are cracks in the underlying rock. Surface water went down through these sinkholes, flowing toward nearby streams by way of this network of underground channels. The same water that helped to create the cave cavity also helped to decorate the cave. When lime-carrying water seeps into a cave and evaporates, a substance called calcite or travertine is produced. Without a travertine, the interior of a limestone cavern, such as Crystal Cave, would look like a big boulder, bare and unattractive. If the travertine extends down a wall or across the floor, it becomes a formation called flowstones. Where water drips from the ceiling, stalactites will hang downward. If excess mineral-laden water drops to the floor, stalagmites will build upward. When a stalactite and stalagmite join, a rather rare column is produced. Sometimes weird and fanciful formations are made. This is how Crystal Cave was formed and decorated. we exhibit calcite of a different form known as aragonite. This polymorph of calcium carbonate usually crystallizes in a needle-like structure. These calcite and aragonite crystals are found throughout the cave and are believed to be how Crystal Cave got its name. Crystal Cave's intricate beauty continues beneath the tour pathways, where many undisturbed and pristine formations remain hidden from view. This rare octahedral crystal formation is called an anthodite. Its 4-inch long needles have been protected and certainly would not have survived had they been in close proximity to tourists. Nature has created this subterranean museum through the action of water and an abundance of time. This underground environment, however, has been negatively impacted by the 5 million people who have passed through its corridors. With conservation in mind, Crystal Cave Company will continue to protect and preserve this natural resource that you will see today. Restoration projects have included the removal of lint and dust from the tour pathway to prevent the discoloration of formations. Lamp flora, or algae that grows around light sources, also requires continual care and removal. Cleaning and washing the cave is labor-intensive, but a necessary component to maintaining the natural conditions of the cave for the enjoyment of tourists for generations to come. After your tour of Crystal Cave, other things to see and do include the Dutch Food Center, the ice cream parlor, and the trading post and museum. We also offer an 18-hole regulation cave-oriented miniature golf course and panning for gemstones. Our nature trail begins alongside the golf course and was laid out through a portion of the tree plantation. We hope you enjoy your day with nature, as well as your tour of Crystal Cave.